everyone. Now that I'm getting back to building, I know people want to see the B-17 project, but I do have a little side project that I want to knock out so I can participate in this Dawn Patrol Challenge at Flite Fest 2022. This challenge was planned out by a few flight test community members, and we launched it on the forums at the beginning of this year. The links below, you can see the growing list of community members who are going to be playing along. After watching Joshua Orchard's D8 and two Melissa builds come together really quickly, I also wanted the instant gratification of a big foam build. But as usual, I may also have bit off more than I intended. Most World War I aircraft had relatively boxy fuselages with a rounded turtle deck and maybe some cheek flares to transition into a radial engine and cowl. Leave it to me to select an aircraft with a fully rounded fuselage, but that's just what I did. I've always loved the Albatros D.Va, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it big so I can cram in a lot of fun details. I did get a start on this model back in December, and in this video I'm going to bring you up to speed on what's been done so far and what's up next. I started from a set of scaled up plans that I found online, and laying those plans out really gave me an idea of the scale of this aircraft. I do love my Ben Harbor Stearman, but she's as big as I can go without making the wings removable, so that was the first challenge that I needed to address. I cut the cores for the upper wing, and I inset a carbon fiber tube and sleeve setup, similar to what I've done with the B-17. For wing retention, I did go a little bit outside the box. I designed these neat printable parts that double as a wing retention and anti-rotation pins. So once printed, you glue a dowel into one end and then magnets into both sides, and you then inset them into the foam core, make sure everything is snug and aligned, and then let the glue set. With 2 pairs per wing juncture, they feel really solid. The flight loads are still taken by the spar, and the magnets, along with the friction on the spar once under load, should have no problem keeping the wings attached. Now, I will have some extra peace of mind with this model though, because I do intend to add full flying wires, and once attached, those wires will also ensure the wing panels don't depart in flight. So with the upper wing underway, I set it aside and I started on the fuselage. To capture the rounded fuselage, I had a lot of options, but I opted to create a central box that ran from the firewall to the tail and then modify the formers to wrap around that box. This gave me a very solid construction that was relatively lightweight. Before starting the sheeting, I did add some foam stringers, much like a traditional balsa build, and as I added these, I did cut away large sections of that central box to save weight. Light ply sections were added in critical areas, particularly at the firewall, the cabane attachment points, and the landing gear attachment points. I made sure to reinforce these areas so that the landing loads are transferred to a large area and hopefully won't damage any of the foam. The tail feathers are made from a double lamination of 6mm foam with a bit of carbon fiber buried inside for some additional strength. I'd originally planned to do a semi-scale pole setup for the rudder and elevator, but for simplicity's sake, I opted to go with giant scale push rods to the servos, and the servos are going to get hidden under the pilot. Giant scale control horns with 440 hardware were also used to help keep those connections solid and slop free. There is minimal wood used in the tail section, just a couple small plates to reinforce the control horn mounts, and some wood supports for the tail skid. These supports pass through and mount to the fuselage and horizontal stabilizer to help spread out those landing loads. There is a functional skid made from plywood and secured with bungee cord that should also help soak up some of that landing stress. I just used a hardwood furniture matching pen to stain the skid. The tail surfaces are covered with Oratex. I know this isn't the lightest covering available, but it is a more scale option than other coverings, and it looks really nice. I'm not going to do a historically accurate livery. I'm just looking to select colors that I like, that look right to me, and I do plan to have some fun with the final paint job. One thing I also want to capture with this model are the areas of exposed wood surfaces. The fuselage of the D.Va was actually sheeted with wood, and to capture that look, I wanted to try out a self-adhesive vinyl wood veneer material. The first place I used this was on the intro-wheel wing. So that intro-wheel wing was hot wire cut and secured to these 3D printed bushings that I've created that hold the main axle to the struts. Once the intro wheel wing was secured, I wrapped it in the vinyl. Now, I didn't do much surface prep, and considering that, I'm very happy with the result. I do plan to wrap much of the remaining fuselage in this material, so we'll see how it holds up and see how bad the weight penalty is. To close out the landing gear, I found this flexible tubing used for, I think it's called shark bite plumbing. It's lighter than traditional PVC, and it's available in a range of diameters. So I wrapped these struts in this material, painted them along with the wheel hubs with a, well, I'm going to call it a period accurate color. Looks good to me. I have spent some time wrapping the fuselage, but I still have a long way to go. There's a few additional things I need to get done before I can sheet any more of that fuselage. Up next, I need to get the lower wing cut and mounted. I need to work out battery access, and then I can start the cabanes and the inter-wing struts so I can ensure that everything is aligned and all of the incidences are right. So that's where the build sits today. I do want to share a couple of the extra details that are going to go into this model, as there's quite a few things that I think are going to really set it off. One of the really distinguishing features of the Albatros is the big exposed engine in the nose. Now, Damon Atwood released plans for a few versions of this engine, and you do have to be a member of his Patreon to get access to those files. But his models, they're second to none in terms of scale appearance. The assembly is not for the faint of heart, but the finished product, well, it's sitting right here, and it really speaks for itself. This is going to be gracing the nose of my D5A. Seated just aft and on either side of the engine are going to be this pair of Spandau machine guns, along with the ammo belts. Now, there are printable versions available, but I did purchase these from iFlight Haley's in an effort to save a little bit of time on the build. They look great, and they're going to further add to the detail. And of course, the pilot bust from Aces of Iron will be riding just aft of the guns. I might add a few more layers of dull coat to take some of the shine off of his skin, but you do have to consider these guys are flying in open cockpits with the wind, sun, oil, grime, all of that in their face. I really love the character in this sculpt, and I'm wanting to kind of capture the look of a pilot returning windblown, exhausted after a long fight. So I think it's going to look great. For some other details, I picked up some goodies from Arizona Models. Specifically, I picked up a spinner kit and some custom covering. Now, the spinner was clearly designed for heavier gas models, and it comes with, I think it's a solid copper backplate. So I may need some nose weight, but I'll likely not need that much. So I have to rethink at least the backplate to get that weight down. Worst case, I could use that spinner to pull vacuum form plastic spinners, but we'll see as I get a little further into the build. Now, the covering I purchased from them is extra special. It's a printed covering material with period accurate scale lozenge pattern. Now, painting that by hand was going to be completely impractical, but with this I should be able to capture that look on the wings without spending weeks masking and painting them to get the pattern right. If you get close enough, you can tell that it was printed, but for a foam model like this, it's going to do the trick really nicely. And finally, I am working on a few 3D printed parts, specifically the radiator that mounts in the upper wing. My intent is to run the wiring for the aileron servos through the hose that connects the engine up to the radiator, so I won't have any exposed wires running from the fuselage to the wings. We'll see how that works out. So that's about it. You're all caught up with where the Albatros D5A sits today. I do want to get this knocked out and made well before Flite Fest so I can work out any bugs before the event. Yeah, so stay tuned for more updates on this and my other projects really soon. Until next time, thanks for watching.